Hey everybody. So, excuse me. Take a sip of my drink here. A pretty good drink. It's got about 12 ounces of Dr. Pepper in it. Tequila, obviously. And Herradura is what I'm drinking this time. And then actually, watermelon juice. Pieces of watermelon, and watermelon juice. It's pretty good. It's better than the cherry grenadine that I was trying before, so. Um, I don't know if it's a thing, but it's my thing right now. And if it's not a thing, I'm totally claiming it. So, you heard it here first. If it's not a thing, watermelon juice, Dr. Pepper, and tequila. So, anyway, um, I want to make a video about Labor Day since this video is going to go out on Labor Day, and I kind of want to talk about a little bit about it, especially with the way our society is kind of in turmoil right now, with increasing the minimum wage and people trying to unionize and all the stuff that's going on, especially the economic downturn that we seem to be entering at this point. Now, Labor Day specifically is kind of tied to the railroad. Like, a lot of people don't know that. And the reason is because back in the late 1800s, so 1893, 95, somewhere there was a company called Pullman. And what Pullman did was they built sleeping cars and then sold the sleeping cars to railroads and then provided the service to operate the sleeping car. And they did it in such a way that they created themselves a monopoly, and eventually in 1946 or 48, the government sued them and broke them up. I'm not sure about the details of that. That's something that, if you want to know more about it, I would suggest you go look at it. But anyway, George Pullman decided he wanted to create a utopia, which is really interesting because Henry Ford did the same thing. It didn't really work. But he did it not here. I think he did it in Venezuela, if I remember correctly. It was either Honduras or Venezuela. And what George Pullman did was he built a town. It was outside of Chicago. And he built a shop there. He built a complex there to build his railroad cars, his sleeper cars and everything, and to build other cars for the railroad as well, some coaches. And later on, I don't remember if they were building coaches in the 1890s or not. And then he built all around the plant. He built houses and like civic centers or parks, streets, everything. He built a town. And the whole town was owned by the company. And then he would rent the houses and stuff out to the employees. And they also provided electricity. They provided water. It was actually quite a nice facility, except for the rules that you had to abide by. I seem to recall way back in reading about Pullman, that some of the rules that you had to abide by were you were not allowed to cuss and swear, I think, in your own house. You weren't allowed to smoke. You weren't allowed to drink. And the company had the right to come in and search your house whenever they wanted to. And make sure that you weren't doing these things. And if you were found to be doing them, you would be fired. Well, about 1893, 1894, there was a downturn in the market. And Pullman was kind of losing money. And so in order to save money, they cut the workers' pay by like 20% and laid off other workers. Because there just wasn't a whole lot of work to be done. But almost all of their workers were living in the little town of Pullman and paying Pullman money for, staying there and everything. And what Pullman didn't do was knowing that this was an issue, he didn't lower the rent. He didn't lower the price of electricity and water. And for the workers that were laid off, they were kicked out of their house. Had to go find somewhere else to stay. And we kind of want to think to ourselves that, well, it kind of makes sense. If you can't pay your rent, you got to go. And but there were a lot of unfair practices as far as this was concerned. And it began very quickly to become impossible to pay for, the rent on the house or the electricity or whatever. And there were certain rules that you had to abide by as far as that was concerned, I think. and if you didn't, then you were out on your ass. And so the railroad workers got together and decided they were going to go on what's called a wildcat strike. And a wildcat strike is basically a strike that's not approved by the corporation. It's a really weird symbiosis when you think about it. I think strikes have to be approved by the union, but they sort of also have to be approved by the company, I think. I'm not real sure on that. But when I was reading up the history of it earlier, it was talking about a wildcat strike. So they decided to go on a strike. And I think it was the American Railroad Union, American Rail Workers Union or something like that, managed to gather a bunch of other members outside of Pullman, Illinois, across a lot of different railroads, people that worked on trains and ran trains and all that stuff. And so all of them began to strike in solidarity, and it really screwed up the movement of freight and mail and passengers on railroads pretty much west of Detroit. And that wasn't good. It affected the economy. It created a downturn in the economy on top of the downturn that was already going on. And so the president at the time, Grover Cleveland, decided something had to be done about this. He insisted that they pass some injunctions or something against the striking railroad workers, and said they had to go move the mail. They had to go run the important trains, the mail specifically. And they absolutely refused. And so Grover Cleveland sent troops to force them to run the trains. And the Union thought the troops were coming in to kind of bolster them up against Pullman and the unfair practices of Pullman. But they weren't. They were coming in to force them to go back to work. And there were riots because of it. There were riots before it, and that was the reason the soldiers got sent in. But there were riots after it because of it. And eventually, it's estimated between 150 and 190 people lost their lives between May and July of 1894, in the middle of all this. And when all was said and done, Pullman kind of won out, sort of, for like a short bit. And everybody went back to work. And to appease the workers, they gave them a day off. They gave them Labor Day, which is today. And that was supposed to get them to be kind of quiet about everything and oh yeah, we got a day off. Because at the time there were no real labor laws. You went to work for somebody, you worked whatever they wanted you to work. It was kind of right to work, And if you didn't like how you were being treated, go work somewhere else, And it's kind of that way today with some states. Texas is a right to work state, so it more benefits, I think, the employer and not so much the employee. But in a way, it's good for both. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, that's how Labor Day came to be. Pullman ended up being sued by the government, I think, in 1895, and he had to sell off all of his residential property. So all the parks, the streets, and the houses, and all that stuff had to be sold off, and it was immediately annexed by the city of Chicago, and continued to operate basically, in a different way, and so eventually it became it's an area that's on the National Register of Historic Places. It's a historic park now, the Pullman area. I think there's still people that live in those houses and everything in that area, but it's an historic park at this point, or a part of the National Register of Historic Places, so it's saved, it can't be torn down, and everything. So that's kind of how Labor Day came around. But I was just thinking about like all the turmoil that's going on right now with the discussion about wages and the discussion about workers' rights and all this other stuff, and it reminds me a lot about not only the Pullman strike, but Labor Day. The way it's always been told to me is to remember the sacrifices that were made by our forefathers as far as Labor Day was concerned. And my understanding was the sacrifices were made in the 1920s during the labor strikes and the labor riots of like the late 19 teens and the 20s. I think it was the 20s and 30s. And that what we enjoy today as far as our work week is concerned. So you're supposed to work Monday through Friday, 8, 8, and 8. 8 hours to work, 8 hours to play, 8 hours to sleep. It was more like 8 hours to work, 8 hours for yourself, and 8 hours to sleep. So that 8 hours for yourself was you could do whatever you wanted to do. And then you got your 8 hours of sleep and you got to go to work. And then you turned around and went to work. The weekend, the structure for our week, the weekend, is a benefit of unions. The weekday that we think of, 9 to 5, that's a benefit of unions. And so as we watch, essentially as we watch, like Starbucks employees unionize, which I never thought I would see a day. And Starbucks employees were unionized, or Amazon unionizing, or whatever. I think we need to remember that they're essentially fighting for the same rights that that our great grandfathers fought for back in the 20s and 30s, and that we have lost that as we have, been tricked or duped by, our employers to go to work and, to chase the dollar. And as, prices for things have gone up and the pay has only increased a little bit. So prices go up like this and the pay increase is just going up like this. It's become harder and harder to survive by yourself. And there was a time in our country in the late 40s, early 50s, where the kind of money that a person could make was enough to not only take care of themselves, but to take care of a spouse and kids and buy a house and 2 cars and have a dog and be able to go on vacations to the Grand Canyon every year. And now what they're essentially paying people is half of that. You adjust for inflation, but they're essentially paying people half of that. But they're paying it twice. They pay it to mom and they pay it to dad. And hey, guess what? Now mom and dad can make enough to have a nice house and have the cars and everything. But then you look at car prices. I don't buy new cars. I can't make myself do it. I remember watching a video on TikTok, and I made a video on TikTok that talks about car prices being car payments for a brand new car being near $1,000 at this point for a car. And I've got a truck that I bought for $1,200 like 3 years ago, and that was it. That was all I paid for it. Gets me down the road. Sure, it gets like 10 miles to the gallon. It's not shiny. Doesn't have all the new fancy features or anything, but it gets me there, But, we really do live in a time right now where there's a real balance in favor of employers and not so much about the employees. And we need to bring it back to a nice balance again. And so more power, my opinion is more power to the Starbucks workers, more power to the Amazon workers. But, as you go about enjoying your Labor Day today, kind of take that into consideration as you do it. If you're out on your boat, if you're at a barbecue, if you just manage to get the day off because it's a national holiday, if you're working today and you're getting time and a half or whatever it is, try to remember that today and the whole weekend, in all honesty, if you were off the whole weekend, came at the benefit of people who fought and died to make sure that you had 8 and 8 and 8 and that you had the weekend and that you had holidays off and everything. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. So, you guys know the drill. Keep shining side up. See you down the road.